Metaphysics, as traditionally conceived, is the discipline of philosophy that is concerned with the fundamental structures of reality as a whole. The human being finds itself as being part of the spatio-temporal world, the physical world, but is at the same time a conscious, self-aware subject that is possessing an inner world of experience and selfhood, and a distinct feeling of possessing a free will. Arguably, these two aspects of human existence are difficult to unite in a consistent and existentially satisfying worldview. Not only does a physicalist explanation, a reduction of consciousness to physical objects and processes, seem existentially unsatisfying, it is also lacking theoretically, as no adequate theory of consciousness within a physicalist framework is present. Thus, if one aims for a consistent worldview, it seems that metaphysics, as traditionally conceived, becomes of great relevance, as its subject matter is precisely the fundamental structures of reality as a whole. That is, it is concerned with the physical world as well as the world of consciousness. And, perhaps even more important, these questions are directly about the human condition and man's place in the world in a larger sense. Thus, they are of existential importance, as they are about how one can or perhaps ought to live one's life. As important as metaphysics as traditionally conceived thus seems to be, it has nevertheless seen a distinct decline of interest and appreciation, starting with Kant's influential critique in the 18th century, accelerating with the rise of the natural sciences and culminating with the linguistic turn of the 20th century, that turned the focus of philosophy to language and linguistics. However, metaphysics, as traditionally conceived, is, in the words of one prominent scholar, currently undergoing something of a renaissance. And in the following, I will present some of the main arguments that constitute this renaissance. I argue that metaphysics as a project is both well-founded and important, including in a modern context. In recent years, the field of meta-metaphysics has emerged. This asks the question of the philosophical status of metaphysics. The debate can be traced back to Quine's and Carnap's discussion in the first half of the 20th century of whether questions of existence are meaningful in the real sense or are merely and purely conceptual. An offshoot debate, usually referred to as meta-ontology, deals primarily with questions of existence, quantification, and ontological commitment. The focus of this video is meta-metaphysics, which deals with the foundations and methodology of metaphysics, and thus also the question of what exists. A line can be drawn here to the approach favored by Aristotle as opposed to the contemporary analytic meta-ontology-oriented metaphysics, which follows Quine's conception of metaphysics. Nevertheless, it's usual to briefly list the main positions of the meta-ontology debate, as these positions can be transferred, if somewhat roughly, to the meta-metaphysics debate. The main positions in the meta-ontology debate are realism, according to which ontological or metaphysical facts are objective and mind-independent. Anti-realism, according to which they are not, and deflationism, which rejects the claim that ontological questions have any real substance. A common type of metaphysical anti-realism holds that metaphysical problems are merely grounded in linguistic or societal conventions, although it does not seem to be widespread in its extreme form, radical deflationism, the general idea that language or societal aspects take precedence over claimed metaphysical facts is an influential and widespread objection against metaphysical realism. Metaphysics is simply all a matter of constructed views according to this position, and consequently the search for objective metaphysical facts is futile. That is, metaphysics as traditionally conceived, the Aristotelian metaphysical tradition or neo-Aristotelian metaphysics, is pointless. Several arguments can be presented against the view that it is merely a semantic question whether a claim can be characterized as metaphysical. While it is quite possible that there is a connection between the content and grammatical structure of a given language and the metaphysical perception of the associated society, the further inference that any metaphysical claim is in this way merely relative is based on inductive reasoning, a generalization based on a finite number of observations, meaning it is not a necessary fact. It seems reasonable that there are possibilities that are not grounded in semantics, modality, de dicto, but that are grounded in the nature of reality, real possibilities, modality de re. Further, it has been argued that there is not historical basis for believing that metaphysical thinking is relative, mapped in a predictable way according to differences in language and culture. Perhaps this belief is a product of the zeitgeist and not very well substantiated. Moreover, a claim that any metaphysical claim is linguistically or culturally relative is itself a metaphysically grounded argument. Thus, it is self-referentially inconsistent. It undermines itself. Finally, central metaphysical questions seem to be situated at a different level of condition than culture and language, since special conditions must be met for culture, language, etc. to be present at all, such as the existence of experiencing and communicating individuals or subjects. And such conditions belong to precisely the level that metaphysics is concerned with. All in all, it seems that we would be justified in rejecting the postulate that metaphysical claims are grounded solely in language or culture. And, as it turns out, ontological or metaphysical realism is not an uncommon view. Perhaps the central question of meta-metaphysics is, how does one acquire metaphysical knowledge? Is the examination of the world an empirical question, the method of inquiry a posteriori, as in the natural sciences, or is it a question of rational thought, of a priori inquiry? The positions in the debate span a wide range of views. They include at one end scientism, which all but eliminates metaphysical thinking. A step away from scientism yields more traditional naturalized epistemology, that is, explanation through natural facts, followed by views on which metaphysics is perceived as possessing a kind of continuity with the empirical sciences. Furthest from scientism are positions on which the examination of reality is seen as accomplished jointly by empirical science and metaphysics, but where the latter is more fundamental. And if the framework of physicalism or materialism, the view that the only thing that exists independently is the physical, and perhaps even physical realism, the view that the physical world exists in itself, is abandoned, as is the case with metaphysical idealism, which holds that consciousness is more fundamental than the physical. The distance between the empirical sciences and metaphysics is even further increased, with metaphysical thinking taking precedence. According to the new Aristotelian meta-metaphysical view advocated in this video, metaphysics is regarded, as it has been historically, as an inquiry distinct from the natural sciences. In the following, some arguments against the more empirically inclined positions will be presented. Logical positivism, which holds that only claims that are empirically based can constitute true knowledge, and therefore that metaphysical claims must be rejected or considered meaningless, was a prominent position in the first half of the 20th century. But it is unable to ground itself empirically. That is, the position is ultimately based on a metaphysical claim and therefore self-referentially inconsistent. And as I've already mentioned, this seems to be a persistent problem for metaphysical anti-realistic positions. They reject the objectivity of metaphysical claims, but are themselves based on claims that are, in the end, metaphysically grounded. This is the case for linguistic and cultural relativism. Another example of this is Kant's influential rejection of traditional metaphysics. According to Kant, it is impossible to obtain knowledge of das Ding an sich, the thing in itself, reality as it actually is. Metaphysical claims derive solely from the fundamental structure of rational thinking about reality, and not from the fundamental structure of mind-independent reality itself. However, it has been counter-argued, if the basic structure of consciousness-independent reality is beyond our cognition in the absolute sense, then the basic structure of consciousness, that is, of thoughts, is equally outside that range, since these thoughts must necessarily be part of this consciousness-independent reality. They would indeed be without existence if we did not think them, but they do not require that we think of them to exist. Objections to this argument may well be made, but then they will be objections based on metaphysical arguments, for example, in a discussion of the ontological status of thoughts, and thus a rejection of metaphysics on these grounds is self-refuting. Another way of asserting the status of metaphysics is to adopt a naturalized epistemology, according to which any acquisition of knowledge must necessarily be consistent with the nature of man as an ecologically situated biological being. That is, epistemology, on this view, should be seen from an evolutionary, psychological, and ultimately physical perspective. From this perspective, we might question whether such a biological being, developed through evolution, guided by selection and adaptation, and aimed at survival in concrete physical environments and situations, could acquire a non-empirically based knowledge of the basic structure of reality. It would seem not. Metaphysical knowledge, it could be argued, must be limited by a physical and biological framework, because only a metaphysics that aided in survival and reproduction could have possibly developed in biological beings such as ourselves. It cannot be that the human mind developed through evolution in a way that equipped it to obtain truth about reality, naturally and necessarily, regardless of the effects of this knowledge acquisition. Instead, it stands to reason that humans are equipped to obtain views, objectively true or otherwise, that assist in survival and reproduction. But against the position of naturalized epistemology stands the observation that no scientific theory, nor the view of naturalized epistemology itself, would seem to offer any survival advantage to those who developed or adopted them. Thus, the proponent of naturalized epistemology is faced with the internal inconsistency of a theory which, if true, would seem to render the emergence of that very same theory in the history of human evolution entirely implausible. Naturalized epistemology, it has thus been argued, is self-referentially inconsistent. Other arguments against naturalized epistemology include the lack of empirical support for it. That is, it is a speculative, theoretical perception of human cognition. In addition, this whole debate around naturalized epistemology necessarily rests itself on assumptions of a metaphysical nature, which are therefore up for discussion, since they seem difficult to incorporate into such a naturalistic view. All in all, there are several substantial arguments against naturalized epistemology and the empirically exclusive positions, as well as against the positions of linguistic and socio-cultural relativism. Also, it has been emphasized that even if it is indeed possible that the truth about the fundamental structure of reality is beyond our reach, we cannot know whether this is the case, and it makes sense to go on seeking a systematic understanding of how we fit into the world. Thus, there are strong arguments for an approach to metaphysical questions that is not based on a relativist or empiricist conception of metaphysics, but on a new Aristotelian understanding, that is, metaphysics as traditionally conceived. Indeed, as the examples mentioned show, several contemporary philosophers are advancing the view that the examination of reality is not merely an empirical, but predominantly a rational question. Traditional metaphysics has faced strong opposition since the beginning of the 20th century. A main, valid objection against this form of metaphysics is that an approach based purely on rational thinking with little or no empirical support can lead to all kinds of strange views. This approach has been criticized memorably as the arcane, untethered system building that had given metaphysics a bad name. The idea that a purely rational deductive approach can lead to absolute truth about the nature of reality, the method that Spinoza used in building his 17th century metaphysical system, for example, has generally been abandoned in contemporary philosophy, not least due to the problem of how to find a foundation for the deduction that is absolutely and undeniably true. If not by name, then in effect, deduction by necessity still plays a central role in philosophy, however. While it seems that only a minority of philosophers openly profess the idea of rational insight, and many are even strongly opposed to it, most of them nevertheless readily perform deductive conclusions from intuitions and conceptual analysis. So in a sense, their practices reveal them. Also, the position of physicalism, the concept that everything is reducible to the physical, faces several difficult challenges, not least concerning an adequate explanation of consciousness, and this has led to a renewed interest in more unconventional views, including metaphysical idealism, for example. And in this case, when physicalism or materialism more broadly is not taken as a fixed premise, Traditional empirical inquiry does not possess the same weight as it does within a physicalist framework. It's not possible to determine, finally, whether there is a non-physical side to reality by observation of the behavior of the physical. And thus, unless entirely different modes of experience, such as the mystical experience, are considered, we are left with rational insight as epistemological method. In a sense, we have to turn to rational thinking instead of empirical observation if we want to address fundamental metaphysical questions, such as whether physicalism is even true or not. Metaphysics, as traditionally conceived, is seen as transcending the other sciences, as their object areas are of a more specific and delimited nature. Thus, biology deals with living organisms, psychology works with mental conditions, physics with universal laws for things that are spatio-temporal in nature, and so on the assumption that reality as a whole constitutes a unity and is consistent, and that there is thus one indivisible truth about the fundamental structure of this reality, very aspect which, as previously touched upon, is stressed as being of special existential importance. Metaphysics, as it is traditionally conceived, is necessary as an intellectual framework for all other fields of science. Each field is concerned, at least in part, with the pursuit of truth, but do so according to their own methods of inquiry and within their own prescribed domain. Therefore, and again given the indivisibility of truth, it is necessary for all of them to recognize the need for mutual non-contradiction and consistency. No single field of science can pass judgment on the question of whether such interscientific consistency is required, and thereby no single science can justifiably reject such a requirement. They each have their own domain as subject area, and therefore cannot rightly perform judgments that go beyond their respective domains. Only traditional metaphysics, which precisely seeks complete universality in its object area, might, in principle, be able to provide clarification of the question of the necessity of consistency. This view, labeled esoteric metaphysics by critics, has been criticized in strong terms. It appeals to those who hold that philosophy is the queen of the sciences. Philosophy investigates what the world is really like, whereas the sciences only find out what the world is like. Some contend that this criticism misses the mark. The real question, they say, is not whether philosophy is the queen of the sciences, but whether metaphysical questions can be sufficiently explained through a primary focus on quantifiers of existence. That is, the formalized analyzing of bound variables with regard to existence, such as is the case in contemporary analytic metaphysics. In fact, they cannot, it is argued, and this mainstream approach, the broadly Quinian metaphysics, must therefore be rejected in favor of the broadly Aristotelian metaphysics, that is, metaphysics as traditionally conceived. A part of the argument for metaphysics in this sense is, as already mentioned, the assumption that reality is consistent and that there is one indivisible truth about the fundamental structure of it. If the premise or the indivisibility of truth is not recognized, and the starting point is instead relativistic viewpoints, emphasizing cultural or historical factors, for example, that argument can be rejected, however. As mentioned earlier, there are substantial arguments to be made against such a starting point, though. The basis for a claim of general cultural or linguistic relativism has been questioned, as has the ability of the particular methodology of a single science, such as anthropology, history, or sociology, to make claims that cover the entirety of reality. Even the view of cultural or linguistic relativism is itself fundamentally a metaphysical thesis. Indeed, it seems that rejecting metaphysics as traditionally conceived leads in general to self-referential inconsistency. It might be that the premise of one indivisible truth is false, but in the end the question of one indivisible truth is a metaphysical question in a traditional sense. Therefore, it can be argued that the argument based on the indivisibility of truth is not of decisive importance for defending the relevance of metaphysics, since this relevance is guaranteed through the fact that everything, including the question of the indivisibility of truth, is open to closer examination through metaphysics. Thus, it has been concluded on this basis that since the doctrine of the indivisibility of truth can stand up to such a test, while a rejection of this doctrine cannot, metaphysics, as traditionally understood, contains the foundation for its own justification. In conclusion, several arguments can be raised against neo-Aristotelian metaphysics, or metaphysics as traditionally conceived. These arguments are based on linguistic or cultural relativism, or the precedence of empirical method over rational thought. But strong counter-arguments can be presented, including self-referential inconsistency and the inability of these views to provide adequate and existentially satisfying explanations. Thus, there are good reasons to accept metaphysics in the traditional sense. Metaphysics, understood in this way, has been categorized by a range of desirable features. It should be concerned with the nature of reality, operate at high levels of generality. Its method of inquiry should be a priori, its means of expression transparent, and it should be capable of providing a foundation for all other inquiry into the nature of reality. As phrased by the British idealist T.L.S. Sprigg, the metaphysician is in search of what may be called absolute truth about the nature of reality. He wants to produce in his mind ideas which are clear and distinct, and which are also true. If we want to truly address the deepest and most fundamental questions regarding our existence, what is the nature of reality, what are we, what is our place in the world, etc., then outside of religious belief or acceptance of a specific metaphysics such as physicalism, there seems to be no way around doing metaphysics in the traditional sense. Even if the answers turn out to be beyond our reach, the mere pursuit of them could very well be of value. Metaphysics is not just about theoretical analysis, but also about self-interpretations, new perspectives on the existential questions, adding new dimensions to one's life, to one's understanding of reality and of oneself. That is, metaphysical thinking can be understood as aiming at both intellectual insight as well as self-transformation in those who engage in it. It possesses existentially transformative potential. In this way, doing metaphysics aligns with a classic understanding of philosophy. It is not merely a matter of theoretical or academic work, but, as one thinker has said, one of philosophy's main aims is to invite us to embark on a journey of self-exploration and self-enlightenment. a journey that transforms the way we interpret ourselves and our relation to and understanding of the world. In this way, metaphysics, as traditionally conceived, is of great importance in contemporary philosophy as well as existentialism. Thanks.